Hi, good afternoon. My name is Anissa Ryland. I'm the director here at the Johnson Center for Child Health and Development in Austin, Texas. Before we get started today, we want to invite all of you to follow us on our social media pages to stay up to date on events, new webinars, scholarship opportunities, and new research. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at JCCHD and on Instagram at the Johnson Center. Following today's webinar, a link will be sent to a short quiz so that you may download a certificate of attendance if you'd like. Today we're talking about social media and adolescents, particularly those with autism and related developmental disorders. This topic has come up because over the last few years there have been several instances where we've encountered issues related to the use of social networking in our teens. As a mother of 3 kids, 2 who are teenagers, and working with many adolescents here at the Johnson Center, I've seen how the landscape for communication and relationship building has shifted more and more to these online platforms. We do have social skills programs here at the center, and while the curriculums we use are current, we did realize that we have to be continually updating them to account for the rapid changes in how children and teens are communicating with one another now. So first, let's quickly talk about what we mean by social media and social networking, and why do we need to talk about it when it comes to our kids. What unique considerations are there, if any, for kids with autism? So at the foundation, social media are websites and applications or apps that enable users to create and share content or to participate in social networking. The social networking is the use of those dedicated websites and apps to interact with other users or find people with interests that are similar to your own. I do want to be clear here that I'm not an expert on this subject, but as a mother and a professional who works with kids and teens, I am keenly interested in the topic. So as I mentioned before, in the past couple of years, there have been several situations that have come up that have pushed this interest along. We've had teens who've faced issues with social networking. Some have thrived and greatly benefited from it, and some of the teenagers have been confronted with some of the downsides of these forums and apps. So the first thing we did when we wanted to tackle this subject was we convened a panel of experts. Our experts were teenagers and college students who volunteered their time with us to answer questions and share their experiences so that we could better understand how we could help our kids be successful in a modern world. Today we're going to have an overview of these conversations and what we learned. And I do want to note that next week's webinar will go over a broader use of technology in autism, so be sure to tune in for that. So when we say applications and sites, what are we talking about? What are the teens and young adults looking at and using these days? And I'm going to start with a disclaimer here that this is always changing. Today a new thing could come out. But based on the panel of the kids we talked to, the apps and websites and platforms that the kids are using today include Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, Kik, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Photo, Musical.ly, Tumblr, Periscope, Reddit, WhatsApp, GroupMe, not to mention all the online forums, texting, email, etc. So it's a lot. Obviously, I can't go into depth in all of those or talk about the pitfalls or the benefits of them, but we're going to give an overview, talk a little bit about general rules, what to think about, things to consider. So let's all just take a deep breath and dive in. So first of all, I want to acknowledge the risks. As parents, as professionals, we're trained to look at keep our kids safe. So that's the most important thing. What are the risks involved in diving into these digital waters, into the social media world? First, most of us know some or all of these. These are not absolutes. It really depends on the person as to if they're at risk in some of these areas, but it is really good to be aware of these. So first risk would be perseveration. Overuse of media is an issue for all teens, and I would argue that it's actually an issue for a lot of adults too. Teens with ASD may be more vulnerable to overusing social media sites, particularly as they get involved in those that speak to their particular interests. There are many ideas and ways to limit the chance of obsessive or overuse of technology, and we are going to discuss many of those in a few minutes. Also, transitioning from online activities to in-person interactions can be more of a challenge. Overuse of internet sites may also limit face-to-face social interactions and reduce those opportunities to practice and learn some of those social or communication skills. So most of us are aware that the internet can be a dark place. With 1 or 2 clicks, really anyone can access unspeakable sites, violence, pornography, more. And this can be difficult for anyone to understand. It's difficult for me to understand, but it may be particularly confusing or concerning to a person with ASD. It can also potentially inspire the person to copy what they saw, especially if they don't know that the images are inappropriate. This can even lead to legal issues. If they see or download illegal or inappropriate content or act out based on what they've seen, it could be anywhere on a spectrum from violating terms of use of sites or lists to downloading illegal content or saying something that could be perceived as a threat or worse. So it's really important to be mindful of the laws and the social constructs that are involved there. Online predators are a reality. They prey on people who they believe they can manipulate or who are vulnerable. Children and teens are especially vulnerable. These predators may be out to get personal information, or they may be trying to involve the child in something that's dangerous or criminal activity. So cyberbullying is something that's becoming a growing issue on the internet. We see it in the news a lot. We hear our schools talk about it. Some people are more apt to say inappropriate or threatening things, hiding behind their keyboard or anonymous usernames. I think they call those the keyboard cowboys. People with autism might be more vulnerable because they might miss some of the subtle social cues or warnings that they're being bullied. They may also lack the tools to advocate for or stand up for themselves or know how to ask for help. Cyberbullying can be daunting and painful for everyone. It may feel like the answer is don't use social media, but really when that's the tool that's most often being used to communicate, build and strengthen friendships, and conveying important topics for ongoing communication, that really isn't realistic or helpful. If the kids miss out on all the inside jokes, miss the information about what people are doing or interested in, then it's harder for them to be included or talk with their peers, and that's just going to make them stand out more and make them more vulnerable to bullying. So you really have to deal with cyberbullying just like you deal with old-fashioned bullying, with open communication, support, education, and awareness. And obviously this is a topic we could talk a lot more about. There's a lot of resources out about this, and I will share some of those later in the presentation. So it's also important to note that people with autism might inadvertently engage in cyberbullying without really being aware or knowing the consequences of their actions. It could be that something happened to them and they're copying, or they feel that turnabout's fair play, so it is really important to talk about this. It's also important to think about the fact that people sometimes feel empowered with the perceived anonymity of the internet, and they can get involved in things or say things that they would not normally say. They may associate with groups or people they wouldn't otherwise. There's little inherent accountability online, aside from parents or communicative peers, and so that's a lot of what we'll talk about today. And social media and communication do sometimes increase social anxiety. Worrying about getting, the likes or being excluded from groups or group chats, seeing these curated, sanitized versions of other people's lives can increase anxiety without the support and communication to address those issues. Viewing these curated posts from peers or people they admire may set an unattainable standard for a child that they measure their life against. So again, we'll talk about how to combat some of those, but it's important to be aware of them. So you look at that, it's a scary list, it's overwhelming, it'd be really easy to say, nope, going to bury my head in the sand and we're not going to go down that. But take a deep breath and think about why you should consider encouraging your teenager to utilize social media, particularly if you have a child or a teen with autism who may not be pushing you to be able to join. There are several things on the pro list when it comes to social media use, and I do want you to consider those reasons, and we're going to talk about those now. So at the top of that list has to be the social connections and the inclusion that comes with being digitally connected to your community. This may even be of particular help to some people with autism because some of the challenges of direct social communication, like face-to-face communication, eye contact, body language, these aren't necessarily issues when it comes to communicating online or on social media. Communication there's visual. You can take more time to process if you're taught to do that. It's always available. It can be more literal. Posts and responses can be thought out, discussed, and edited, and you can reflect and learn on your past communications. It's important to know that there is data that tells us about this shift in how our kids are communicating. The Pew Research Center conducted a survey in 2014 and 2015, and one of the more interesting findings was that teens feel more connected to their friends when they communicate with social media. 69% felt more connected to their feelings, and you can see 83% felt more connected to their lives. In practical terms, that means they have more to talk to their friends about, more to relate to their peers about, and these are things that will help our teens with autism who are looking to make more meaningful connections and relationships with their peers. That same survey also told us what we already know. Teens are online, and they're online a lot. That's where the social communication is taking place. 92% of teens were online every day, with most of them being online several times a day. But in contrast, according to a study from researchers at the University of Missouri and Washington University, 64% of teens with autism are avoiding social media, instead spending most of their free time watching TV and playing video and computer games. These rates were much higher than among people with other types of disabilities. The study also found that when teens with autism were using electronics, they were nearly 5 times more likely to be engaging in solitary activities instead of using things like email, social media, or messaging. So they're missing out on gaining important insights and building connections that might help them. There are some social implications to this choice. Children and teenagers with autism often do go through social skills classes, whether as part of their school or behavior programs or independent of those. And these programs sometimes can have incomplete or dated information. If our children want to be included in a more diverse environment, they need current skills and tools to be supported and be successful. I remember once working with a psychologist who was talking about when she would go in and do program reviews at schools or in behavior programs, you know, she would go in and there would be 4- and 5-year-olds who were taught to approach a child on the playground, stick their hand out and say, "Hi, my name is Joe, what's your name?" and try to shake somebody's hand. And if you have a 4-year-old, have had a 4-year-old, or frankly have been a 4-year-old, you know 4-year-olds don't shake hands unless they're being silly or copying somebody. They just start playing next to one another and then eventually might share a name, they might not. They could play together for an hour and never share a name. So to teach our kids to approach kids that way makes them stand out more. So it is important that our social skills classes are really looking at what children are doing and teach them real-world skills. Social media, in that regard, is really an important mechanism for the interaction and conversation among our kids, and it plays a critical role in connecting these teens to new friends, allowing teens to learn more about their new friends and getting to know them better. And then beyond making new friends, it's playing a major way in teenagers interacting with their existing friends. It's a way to connect with their peers or people with similar experiences or interests, provide support and community. So our expert panel of teenagers and college students that we talked to said that when they meet a new friend, they first give them their Instagram name or their Snapchat code. And then they might start direct messaging with them on one of those apps, and eventually they might ask for a phone number. So in our social skills classes, if you look at a lot of published curriculums, they'll teach kids to ask for a phone number or an email when you first approach somebody. That's really not how peers are communicating these days. So we need to be aware of that and stay aware of how that's changing. Another consideration is future employment skills. Social media and computer-based communication technologies are making it possible for many people with autism to enter the workforce more productively. According to the MIT Sloan Management Review, several large tech companies are intentionally tapping into the autism community to access valuable skills that are in demand. Software companies like SAP and Microsoft, for example, are now actively looking to hire people with autism. SAP has said they plan to have employees with autism make up at least 1% of their workforce by 2020. So 2 reporters, Emily Kincannon and Gerald Kane, reported that recent gains in social media adoption are part of what makes this new perspective on autism and employment possible. Utilizing computer-based communication can also help alleviate some of the challenges that people with autism might have in the workplace and allow them to better share their knowledge and skills. So some considerations to think about as you approach social media use and technology, particularly for our kids on the spectrum, and these are going to be different for everyone, but to think about first might be, what age are people accessing certain social media sites or apps? Almost all of them have recommended ages, but again, you're looking at an honor system. If I'm clicking on a website that says, "Are you 13 or not?" That's a recommendation, but clearly you can click yes or no any age you want. But look at that and see what age are appropriate. What sites or apps are appropriate for your particular child? Not thinking about the age they put, but what is your particular child ready for? What sites and apps are being used by their peers? What are the other kids using to communicate with one another? What rules fit with your family values? And this is an important one. We all have different family values. We all have different parenting styles. We all have different beliefs, and it's important to factor those into anything, any consideration that we're recommending here today. This is broad. You need to kind of think about it, research it, and fit it to your family. And also look, what are your child's interests? Some of the sites are going to be better tailored to particular interests of a child. So we have that big list of risks that we looked at a while ago that was scary and daunting, but really, honestly, there's risk to anything. Nobody ever parented any teen and said, wow, that was really easy. So I think you could argue that a big part of parenting any child, special needs or not, is all about being aware of the dangers and the risks and then preparing our kids to deal with them. So with that in mind, let's talk about how we can prepare our kids to better utilize these tools. First of all, you have to educate yourself. Know what you're giving your kids access to. What types of media can they access? Whether they have an iPod, an iPad, smartphone, laptop, Kindle, or even most gaming systems these days, kids will have access to the internet and the apps on many of them. So know what apps your kids are downloading or looking at, what websites they're visiting, pay attention to the age restrictions on those sites, and whether through parental control software, which we'll talk about in a little bit, checking the history on your child's devices, talking to your kids, or really all of the above, just try to stay involved and stay informed. And it's an ongoing process because, like I said, this is always a changing landscape. We should also educate our children. We need to talk to our kids about what's appropriate and what is safe. And this is for every kid. There's a way to teach this lesson to people at any level. And we'll talk about some of the tools you can use to do that in a minute. But teach them that posts online will last forever. Don't adopt a don't ask, don't tell attitude. Just like we teach our kids manners at the table or manners when they receive a gift, we need to teach them manners about online behavior. That anonymity of the internet I talked about, combined with a teen's impulsivity, can really lead kids to do things that they might not otherwise do. So talk to your children often about what's appropriate and what is safe and the consequences of making bad choices online. It's important to set and communicate clear expectations. Consider writing a contract or a set of rules. We did this in my house. When my kids got their phones, they got a bulleted contract of all the expectations, rules, responsibilities that came with that. Think about what they have to do to earn or pay for access to phone or computers. What are the limits? When can a computer be used? Where can it be used? For how long? Make sure everybody knows the rules and plans up front. What access will they have? What privacy, if any, can they expect? What do you expect of them? And in this way, it's much better to be proactive and communicative about this rather than reacting after the fact. Some questions you can ask yourself to help set these limits. Or do you want them using these devices at night when they should be sleeping? Should there be gadget-free time in your house? Should their phone have limits on texting or calls, limited data plans? Some carriers do have parental tools that help you monitor these things. Make sure everyone understands the terms and consistently enforces the rules. And one thing to think about, kind of a specific practicality on this that I have found helps, is most apps have options to elect in or out of notifications, or that is those little pop-ups that tell you if you have a text or a message or something's happened. I have found that requiring my kids to opt out of these notifications really helps limit their use and reduces their anxiety or their fear of missing out. If your phone is constantly buzzing, beeping, and humming, it's a constant call to check it. Without these, you can be mindful about your use and control when you're checking that information. You should utilize parental controls when necessary and decide what kind of access you'll have to your children's phone and their laptop. Again, communicate this all up front and in a clear manner. Many people require their children or teens to provide their passwords and access. This doesn't mean you have to stalk them, but when kids know there's accountability, it might help them make better choices and will allow you to stay informed. Know that there are many ways you can use parental controls on social media. You can download apps that can limit or monitor use. The new ones are coming out all the time that you can find on the App Store. Consider using a Wi-Fi router that will allow you to turn off access at certain times. There are routers that will allow you to manage internet access for all of the devices in your house. Another way to encourage safety and monitor use is to encourage use in communal rooms. It's not a bad idea to have bedrooms be electronic-free zones from a sleep hygiene perspective, and if your kids are using their devices in communal rooms, you'll have more oversight on what they're doing. So really, one of the most simple ways to keep your child safe is to talk to them. Discuss the manners, the dangers, the consequences. Talk about what's right and wrong. Talk about concerns. Talk, 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 and talk again. So a blogger who I follow had a post she shared recently on this subject. Her children are all younger teens, and she does require open access to their technological devices. She talked about a scene recently when she was glancing through her son's phone, looking at his social media accounts. Her son had asked her when he might get some privacy on his phone. She explained to him that requesting privacy on the internet is like requesting privacy in the middle of a baseball stadium during the World Series. Both the stadium and the internet are public places. If you say things in either, people are free to hear what you said. She further explained that this was doubly true for her because A, she's a person, and B, she likely paid for his ticket both to the internet and the baseball game. She went on and validated his need for privacy. She said examples of private spaces are bathrooms, in your bedroom, or in your brain. She suggested that when he needed privacy for his thoughts, then maybe he should keep them in his head or write them in a diary that was kept in his room, clarifying a diary in your room is private, but the internet is public. Her son countered with her that he could make his account private, She replied that when you create an internet account that other people visit, you can imagine that your account is like a room into which you're inviting people, and it's like you're hosting a party. Since he's a teenager, there's no such thing as your very own party. As a minor, any party that he hosts is really hosted by the parents. What happens at that party is her responsibility, and making sure the party is safe for all guests, including her son, is also her responsibility. Acknowledging that part of the job as being a teen is to push for more independence, she welcomed his request for more privacy, but pointed out she was also doing her job by helping him, protecting him, and teaching him. We might not all agree with the approach or philosophy here, but there is something to be learned by the open communication and the clear expectations she communicated in her story. So what are some tools that we can use to teach our kids how to proactively and productively utilize social media? Well, first is visual supports. Provide reminders or images of safety tips. You can make a checklist of do's or don'ts that can help. Maybe make a list of appropriate websites to start out with, or reminders to check in with a trusted adult. In the beginning, most tools will allow you to set limits. For example, on an iPhone, you can set the browser to only go to approved sites, and you can add more sites to that list as your child grows and learns more. You can also use role-playing. Role-play scenarios with the child. Contrive situations they might encounter and discuss. Why are they safe or not? You can use social stories, and we'll have some references and resources for this at the end. Write a social story or a script for the teen. This can be another tool to reinforce ways to stay safe on the internet and how to use it well. Talk about what bullying looks like so that the person recognizes it if it's happening to them. For example, name calls or sending threatening messages or pictures. Teach the person how to use online tools, how they can block people on social media sites, report threats, things like that. Teach them to be media literate. Recognize what is altered or unreal online. Just like we all see those side-by-side comparison of Photoshop photos, you can find similar examples of content online as well. And again, encourage them often to seek out trusted adults in unsure situations. And if you have some of that communal activity where you can sit down with them or be near them and kind of point out some of these situations, it can really help. Talk about the laws. Talk about what's legal and not legal, what's right and not right. Supervise, like we said, be in communal areas or have time where you sit down together and go through their social media sites and talk about what you see. And you can also utilize nanny locks or parental controls, which again we'll talk about more in a little bit. Safety first, always. So really the things to think about to make sure they're safe. Online only friends stay online. If someone you know online asks to meet you, you need to let an adult know. It's important to teach them that manners matter. Don't share anything online that you wouldn't say to a person's face or that you wouldn't want your parents or grandparents to hear. It's important to talk about not sharing personal information. Never give out your full name, where you live, where you go to school. You can develop a checklist of information that should not be given out online for safety reasons, like your birthday, address, school, etc. And you can also make a list of things it's okay to talk about. And this is a good activity to do and to revisit as they learn more skills. It's important to teach them to trust their feelings. If anything makes you upset or uncomfortable, they should talk to you or a trusted adult. Remember that not everything on the internet is true, and that's a really important lesson for our kids and all of us to learn. Just because it's online doesn't make it true. It's important to set rules, particularly with younger children, about spending money online without permission, especially a lot of our accounts, if you're sharing a tablet or a device. I know a lot of accounts have prepayment settings already. You might end up with a lot of Amazon boxes at your doorstep. And then beware of attachments from unknown sources. Just talk to them about viruses, things like that, that you should only open things from people that you know and trust. So there are some resources and tools you can use to help with the safety. If you look up, there are several sites. This is just one. PC Magazine annually does a list of the best parental control software and reviews it. Know that these methods, pop-up blockers or software programs to block or monitor content, they're not foolproof and they're not a substitution for awareness and communication, but they can be one tool in your tool chest. So I know we just went through a lot, and I do want to say really quickly here that this will be posted on our YouTube channel for review. So I know we've gone through a lot. You can always revisit it, and we'll have time for questions at the end. But I just wanted to check in to see if there were a couple of questions now that we could get to. Let me just take a look here. So someone asked, how do I know what sites or apps are appropriate for my child? Well, it really depends on the child. So we're going to do an overview of some of the more common sites in a minute, and you can kind of try to identify which ones might be appropriate for your child to start with or to add on. But one thing you might do is, if you identify a site, is make a list of skills they need to be successful on that site. If there are things that your child needs to know before using a site, like identifying private information or making casual observations, how to use a computer, how to take a picture, that kind of thing, you can make a list and start to teach those skills in preparation for using that particular site. Let's see, excuse me. What do I do if I can't stop my child from overusing or obsessing about a site? Well, we talked about that a little bit, but there are levels to this. I mean, we're all, I think, a little obsessed with certain things that comes with technology. If it's not a huge problem, you can begin with clearly setting limits and making sure those limits are clearly articulated. Use timers that they can see, give warnings, you know, you have 15 minutes, now you have 10 minutes, you have 5 minutes. If it does become an issue, then access would be limited by not following those rules. And be sure, one thing it's important to remember is be sure to have access to other stimulating activities when they're not in use. If it's a question of I'm on my computer or phone or sitting here doing nothing, that's all they're going to think about. If you can make sure and propose lists, we have an R list and I'm bored list. You're never allowed in my house to say I'm bored. If you're bored, if you're done with your phone, if you're done doing something you want to do and your time is up, go consult the list on the fridge for something fun to do. And we kind of revisit that from time to time so it stays up to date. If it really becomes a big problem, the overuse and the obsession, you really do need to consult a professional. It is becoming more known among psychologists, behaviorists, that we have these internet obsessions, and having tools to deal with it may require professional intervention. So know that that is a resource out there if it becomes too much of an issue. So moving on. We started off at the beginning really looking at some of the most commonly used apps and sites that our focus group of experts identified. I want to briefly go through these so you can see how they're used and what you need to be thinking about. One encouraging thing that we heard from all of our kids we talked to was that they were keenly aware that schools, colleges, potential employers, internship sites would likely see what you post. They do avoid posting anything that's rude, illegal, and offensive. Most of them also stated they avoid all arguments online and always check themselves before they post a comment. Now, obviously, that's not true for everyone, but it is encouraging to know that people are more aware of that. Most of the kids reported their parents did follow them on their social media accounts, and even some of their friends' parents. And so there's some accountability in that. So if your kid says nobody's parents follow them, that's not true. A lot of the kids did say they don't follow teachers or allow teachers to follow them, and that's a consideration for a lot of people. The only exception on this was Facebook, which we'll talk about in a minute. So a lot of schools do have rules about that, so you can check with your school. Some don't have any, but a lot of them do require that teachers not interact with their students on social media. So before we move forward, I do want to take just a second to talk about old school email and text. Emails really haven't changed much, except in how often they're used, but you should teach your kids how to write a proper one. And texting, all of our kids told us, really is used for practical purposes, communicating a need. Conversations take place in apps. Kids don't really text with each other anymore. Group text, like study groups or small groups of friends, are more like a conversation, and the tone is often set with emojis or inside jokes or shorthand. One interesting thing I learned that in text, punctuation means it's serious. Kids don't use punctuation in text, and that's something that adults sometimes struggle with. But one girl said to me, whenever her dad would text her and he would end the sentence with a period, she always thought that he was really serious and something was wrong. He was just using good grammar. So in terms of teaching your kids how to use these things, the grammar and the punctuation really goes out the window. People are more understanding about tone, and that's something to talk to your kids about a lot, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But when you're doing the role playing or any social story scripts, kind of find some examples that you can read in different tones, the same sentence, to teach your kids that sometimes their interpretation is not how it was intended. And the same thing, they need to be mindful when they're saying something, how it might be interpreted. When you're looking at these applications and your children are signing up for them, think about screen names. For most of the applications, people do use their name or some derivative of their name so that their friends can find them. And there are some exemptions to that we'll talk about. Some people do even create 2 or 3 accounts, and we'll talk about that too. Some people have what they call spam accounts to post silly things. Some kids also have an activity-specific account, particularly on Instagram or things like that. If they're artists or musicians or athletes, they might have an account specifically to share their work or their talents. And that's something they could later share with colleges or other people that are interested. Almost every kid we talked to said they never make phone calls anymore. Phone calls are a thing of the past. Other general advice we were given in terms of social skills curriculum: selfies should be limited to direct messages on apps and are almost always goofy or self-deprecating. Serious ones are really interpreted as coming across as self-absorbed. Important to know that you don't have to reply to every comment or post. Often just liking something is enough, and that's something I think our kids struggle a little bit with in terms of the kids with autism in our social skills group, teaching them that just because somebody posted it doesn't require you to comment on everything, because that's a lot of effort to come up with something to say about everything. Really, they need to understand that hitting that like button is a comment. The kids also cautioned us that by the time something hits mainstream, that is, that the parents or teachers know about it, it's usually over. So things like TBT, Throwback Thursday, or hashtags, those are really over. Parents are the ones using them now. Adults are the ones using them. The kids only use them ironically. So let's see what's out there and see what's being used. And again, I know this is going to be a lot, but as I said, this will be on our YouTube channel, and we're happy to answer questions. So let's talk briefly about Facebook. Most of us know about Facebook mainly because the users are now skewing a little bit older. It's the popular free social networking site. It allows users to create profiles, upload photos, videos, and messages. The site, which is available now in I think 37 different languages, includes those features like groups, events, pages, things like that. It offers a range of privacy options, which are always changing, so it's important to always look at what's up to date. A member can make their communications private, but you do need to go to those privacy settings and check them often and make sure it's set the way you want it to, meaning you can choose whether people can see what you post, whether only people you're friends with can see what you post, things like that. So the kids we talked to said that teens rarely post status updates on Facebook anymore. They mainly use Facebook for two things. One is to share photo albums, so they'll share individual pictures on things like Instagram or Snapchat, but if they have a lot of photos of an event, say prom or a particular game or a party, they'll put all the photos on Facebook in an album so that they can share them. The other thing they use it for is school events. So this is the one exemption to a lot of times to teachers, because a lot of schools are using Facebook pages or groups to communicate with kids. I know at my kids' school, a lot of the fine arts things, they'll have, for band has its own group, and that's how they'll communicate information, or orchestra will have a group, and that's how they share their information. And so sometimes kids will use it for that purpose, and teachers will be on there as well. But really, most of the kids said they only check their Facebook page maybe once a day, compared with several times a day for Instagram and Snapchat. So it's really not the main platform that kids are using these days. Twitter is something that's been in the news so much these days. I think we all get the gist, but it's a free social networking site that allows users to broadcast short posts called tweets. Twitter members can broadcast tweets and follow other users' tweets. Tweets and replies to those tweets can be seen on the Twitter website or the app. It's important to note that the default setting on Twitter is public. Unlike Facebook or Instagram, where members have to approve social connections, anyone can follow anyone on public Twitter. Tweet tweets into conversations, people might use hashtags there as keywords, but these tweets are limited to 140 characters, and because they can be delivered in real time, it might seem like an instant message, but unlike instant messages that might disappear when the user closes the application, tweets are on the website for good. They're permanent, they're searchable, and they're public. So anyone can search tweets on Twitter, whether they're members or not. So most of the high schoolers we talked to said they don't really post to Twitter much, though they think it might be bigger at some schools. And that was something important we learned, is there really are regional differences to what applications people are using and how they're using it. So this is one of those things where we're going to give you information. If you want to know what kids in your area are doing, you really need to go on those sites or talk to the kids there and find out specifically what's happening in your school, in your region. The kids we talked to said they do read it when it comes to things in the news, but they don't really post much there. So Instagram is a very popular social networking app that's made for sharing photos and videos. It's similar to Facebook or Twitter, where everyone who creates an account has a profile and a news feed. And when you post a photo or video on Instagram, it's displayed on your profile. Other users who follow you will see your posts in their own feed, and you'll see posts from other users who you choose to follow. So every user profile has a button you can tap to follow them, and if a user has their profile set to private, they have to approve you first. So keep in mind that when your profile is created and set to public, anyone can find whatever you post and see everything you post. So learn how to set yours and your child's to private if you only want the followers you approve to be able to see your post. The kids we talked to reported that there's really a lot of social anxiety involved with Instagram, so that's something to be mindful of. There's a lot of anxiety in terms of seeing how many likes your picture will get. They told us that like-worthy photos are often pictures that are good quality, look fun, events they can relate to, and maybe show fun memories. They said they don't like it when people post too many selfies or post weird pictures that are hard to understand. They said you should only tag people who are in a photo, and you need to know how to untag yourself in photos that you don't want to be tagged in. The girls we talked to said they think about the timing of the photos that they post. Like, you don't want to post on a Saturday night because you're going to assume people are busy and won't see it. A good time might be Sunday night, and it's something they spend a lot of time thinking about. They summed it up by saying that your Instagram page is the best presentation of you, the hobbies and cool things you're into. So it really is a curated view into someone's life, and that's important to talk to our kids about, that they're only seeing what people choose for them to see and that are really the best of, and sometimes even embellished to look good. The guys that we talked to said that they rarely comment on photos. They don't really say much. They might like it, but they don't say anything. If they do comment, it's usually an inside joke. The girls said they like to keep their comments positive. The girls also reported that they often ask their friends what pictures to post and what captions to use. The guys we talked to said they usually only post pictures about sports, hobbies, or group pictures, rarely single pictures of them by themselves. If they have a girlfriend, they might post pictures of her or the two of them, but not very often. This is a platform where kids will often have the spam accounts we discussed. They're called spam accounts, or some people call them Finsta or fake Instagram accounts. And they have their regular profile and then the second spam profile that's sort of a secret account. And what we found when talking to the kids is it's not really done with ill intent. Often they'll limit their spam accounts to their closest friends and then their regular accounts to more people. And the spam account, the one with their close friends, they'll post the sillier photos, the less curated photos that they don't necessarily want everyone to see. But it is important to know about because there are some people that do use these spam or Finsta accounts for more questionable content or to hide information from their parents. So it's important to keep that in mind. Oh, good old Snapchat. Here's a fun fact you can impress your kids with. Snapchat's logo is named Ghostface Chilla. It's based on Ghostface Killah of the Wu-Tang Clan. Little tidbit to make you sound cool to your kids. So Snapchat is one of the most popular social media apps with kids right now. 46% of the class of 2014 reported using it daily, and use has only increased since then. In 2017, it was reported that Snapchat had 158 million daily active users, and most of them are young people. The vast majority are 13 to 34, with 18 to 24 making up the largest segment. Users 24 and younger visit it more than 20 times a day and spend at least half an hour on there, while those 25 and older logged 12 visits lasting 20 minutes, according to an article in the LA Times in 2017. So for those of you who don't know, what is Snapchat? It's a mobile messaging app used to share photos, videos, texts, and drawings. It's free. There's a feature that makes Snapchat different from other forms of texting and photo sharing, and that's that the messages disappear from the recipient's phone after a few seconds, although they can be captured with a screenshot, so that's really important to know. Don't think it's going to go away. Nothing on the internet ever goes away. Snapchat's simple to use. You take a picture with your camera phone, you select who you want it to go to or to your story, and you click send. For the recipient, it's a lot like getting a text. You just tap it to open it, and then it disappears. Like we said, you can still take a photo of that. Users can add friends from their contact list or even people who are nearby. If location is turned on, it'll show you people nearby. There's a drawing tool in there where you can add drawings or text to photos. And then it's also important to know that kids who are using it, which are the majority of them, say they like it because it combines the features of texting, FaceTiming, and visual imagery of Instagram. Some reports say Snapchat is perceived as a more authentic imagery or more authentic version since the app favors spur-of-the-moment posts rather than those kind of carefully edited, curated selections. A consumer research report by Goodwater said that there's a sense that Snapchat is a better reflection of the real life, whereas Facebook and Instagram portray only an embellished life. Snapchat's also where a lot of people get their news, a lot of young people. Most teens report they spend considerable time looking at the news stories on there from CNN or BuzzFeed or some of the other sites. And so the other feature of Snapchat that kids really like, especially the younger kids, is Snapchat filters. It allows users to add fun filters to their pictures. Excuse me. Here's an example of what those might look like, and there's always new ones coming out. So the kids we talked to said that they mostly use Snapchat with their close friends. They tend to ignore requests or block requests from people they don't know. This is mainly because they're more free with what they post on here. Though they did report their parents, and some of their friends almost always follow them. So again, if your kid says other parents don't follow, that's not true. Of the probably 50 kids or so we've talked to, almost every one of them, and with no exception, said their parents do follow them on their Snapchat accounts, as well as some of their friends' parents. Snapchat does now notify the user if someone takes a screenshot of their post, and Snapchat has really taken the place for a lot of kids of texting. Rather than texting back and forth, they're messaging back and forth on Snapchat. I've tried to get to the root of why that is. I'm not really clear. I think it's a lot of it is they like the visual aspect with the ability to use the filters or the texting on the photos, and to kind of have a direct back and forth conversation with a lot of people in one place. There is a kids version for younger kids under 13 called Snap Kids that you can use as an introduction to Snapchat for anybody that you want. This is designed for kids, and it only allows users to create and save the snaps or the pictures. And by using Snap Kids, no Snapchat account is created. Your email address and password are only on your device, so you can at least get a sense of taking the pictures and what you can do before you graduate to the larger site. YouTube is an important one. Some people don't see YouTube as a social media platform. You're likely familiar with YouTube as a place to watch funny videos of cats or learn how to tie a tie or whatever, but YouTube has firmly established itself as a social media website. The core uses of social media are there. You can post and share videos and gather subscribers who want to watch your videos. You can make friends with people who share your interests and send out friend requests on YouTube just like on other social media platforms. You can click to favorite videos you like and try to get others to favorite or like your videos. You can comment and respond and comments on all the videos. So a lot of young people, and especially young people with autism, really have an affinity for YouTube because they can immerse themselves into topics that they love. They can learn new things, share special skills or knowledge that they might have, and build a social community of people who also have similar interests. But you should be mindful of overuse, just like any social media platform. There have been a lot of reports of compulsive use that mirrors that of other addictions, so setting time limits really is advised. I don't even know how many millions or billions of videos there are on YouTube now, but it's a rabbit hole you can go down and get lost in really quickly. Kik, so at first glance, Kik is really just another free messaging app for smartphones. You log in, you pick a username, and you can send texts or selfies to your friends. That's really just the first level of Kik. It's clearly designed with the teenage user in mind, and in fact their CEO said that the youth are their primary focus. Kik claims it's the most used chat app of choice for 40% of US teens. That's their claim, I'm not sure. The app does have a built-in web browser and all sorts of internal apps, which means that once you get in there, they're trying to give you very little reason to leave. You can play games, you can make memes, you can watch videos, you can listen to music, check out content on Reddit, something we'll talk about later. And crucially, you can find and chat with total strangers on Kik. Two of their internal apps, one is called Flirt, that gives you a list of users in your age range to, as it says, flirt with, and one's called Match and Chat, which is kind of like Tinder that lets you kind of swipe on users and talk to people that you like. So while the ability to match people up with strangers for a conversation really is not new, remember back in the day with AOL chat rooms, what's concerning to a lot of parents and internet safety people with Kik is that it's anonymous. Kik does not require you to link your account to a phone number, so you don't have to use your real name, so you need to be aware when your kids are on that app. LinkedIn, the reason I mention it here, it is a social media site, and a lot of high schoolers are being encouraged to use it as part of their college or post-high school employment application preparation and progress. So it might be a good idea to teach older teens about the site and teach young adults to discriminate between content that's appropriate for a business site versus a personal site, because LinkedIn is a social network site designed especially for business. The goal is to allow people to network, and on their profile page you post information about your employment, education history, skills, and so it is important to learn to discriminate what's appropriate for a personal social media site versus a business site. Pinterest is another social network, and this is one I know a lot of adults use as well, but it's used to visually share and discover new interests by posting, or what they call pinning, on Pinterest images or videos on your board. So think of it as like a collection of bulletin boards, and you're pinning things that you like. They usually have a common theme, and then you can browse what other people have pinned as well. It's got a visual orientation, and it's very much focused on kind of a lifestyle concept that allows you to share your tastes and your interests and discover other people's. And its goal is to connect everyone in the world through the things they find interesting as their mission. So users can upload images onto the site from their computer or pin things that they find on the web. So they can also perform standard social networking functions like following the boards of their friends or liking and commenting on others' pins or boards, repinning content to their own board, things like that, or even sharing it on other platforms like Facebook or Twitter or email. A lot of the girls that we talked to said they use it a lot to pin items for things like clothing they want, or things for colleges they like, or things for dorms, and they like to also follow other people their age and see what they pin. Photo's just one. It's a social media app that allows you to share GIFs or GIFs, however you want to say it, that you take on your phone. So it will convert photos into GIFs, and you can share it on other platforms as well. Musical.ly is one I mentioned because it is a video app, so you create 15-second music videos, and a lot of kids like that. It works that kids will take a snippet of a popular song and then record themselves singing or lip-syncing or dancing. Some kids will do comedy skits, and then once they finish recording, they can add effects and filters and then share them on the site as well as other social networks. So the one thing about this is it does really encourage people to try and grow a fan base. So you're supposed to share your videos, and then it encourages users to post them on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. And then they can also save the video to their camera roll and post it in other online communities. So the goal for many users is to have a featured video. And so the featured videos are chosen by the app, and they appear on their featured feed, and they usually get more likes or fans. So for everybody wanting to be an internet star, it kind of plays into that. All of the accounts are public by default, so it's important to know that. If a kid posts a video, everyone can see it. Everyone can follow them. Most accounts on there are public because, like I said, people are trying to get into that featured video category. Kids can change their account to private. With a private account, then only approved followers can see what they've created. Tumblr's been around a while. It was founded in 2007. Yahoo bought it back in, I think, 2013. It's one of the world's most popular blogging platforms. It has 200 million blogs, 420 million users. About half of those are from the US. It allows anyone who says they're 13 to create an account. It's almost impossible to find people on Tumblr without knowing their usernames. Most people on this one do not use their actual name. They make one up. Users can post on their board, follow other bloggers, search keywords. You can post content, text, photo, pictures, videos, music, and they can be original or reposted from other sites. Like I said, most users will use nicknames instead of their real name, so it's really hard to find people you know, but that also keeps it anonymous. So if kids go on there, you never know who you're talking to. And it's really important that parents and adults are aware that there's a lot of inappropriate content that's found really easily on Tumblr. So there's not great parental controls on there, and you can find a lot. So you need to be mindful and monitor the use of kids on that site. Periscope is an app that lets you share and experience live video direct from your phone or tablet. Periscope says it can be used to capture the atmosphere of a match, to broadcast an unfolding news story, or experience like what it's like to walk down the streets of New York. That's their statement. The immediacy of the app encourages viewers to participate in what's happening in the video. So viewers can do this by sending in comments, which the person who's sharing the video can respond to in real time. This feature of Periscope makes for an active viewing experience rather than watching a pre-recorded video, but then you do have to be mindful that you are streaming a live video that other people can watch and comment on. Reddit is, I don't really understand Reddit, I'm going to say right now, but it's a social media, social news aggregation, and discussion website. The registered community members submit content such as posts or links, and then registered users vote on those submissions. They vote up or down, and then that determines the position on the site's pages. The submission with the most positive votes appears on the main page at the top of the category. So content entries are in areas of interest called subreddits, and some of those can be things like news, science, gaming, music, books, image sharing, things like that. So it's really a discussion board site. As of 2016, Reddit had 542 million visitors, ranking number 11 in the most visited website in the US. So there's a lot of content there, a lot of places to go. You know, if you Google a question, a lot of times you'll find answers on Reddit that people have shared. That also kind of leads you to those discussion boards where people can post their own questions, ideas, experiences, things like that. WhatsApp and GroupMe are apps for smartphones. They're really kind of text apps. WhatsApp uses the internet to send messages, images, audios, or video. It's very similar to text messaging, but because WhatsApp uses the internet, the cost can be cheaper if you have limited text or you don't have access to all your to unlimited text. You can use WhatsApp. It's a popular with teenagers because of features like group chatting, voice messages, location sharing. So that's something to be mindful of, as you can share your location. GroupMe is similar. It's a group messaging app that's owned by Microsoft. Some of the features include the ability to share photos, videos, your location, create events. Lots of school groups and teachers use GroupMe to communicate to their classes or large groups. And I would say this is one that you really want to be mindful to turn off the notifications, because if you're in a really large group chat, people get in discussion, your phone will be buzzing all the time. And so that's one that it's really good to go check in on rather than getting the notifications. That's my personal opinion. And then, you know what, there's always something new coming up. There's Peach, Wanello, Shots, Hyper, Bebo, Masquerade, who the heck knows what else. There's always new platforms that are being created, bought, sold, promoted by some of the big players. So you just always have to kind of be mindful of what the kids are downloading in their apps so that you can educate yourself on what they do. So what about message boards? Well, there's some great ones, and since we're talking particularly about our autism community, Wrong Planet is a really large one. It's a web community designed for people with autism and their parents and professionals that work within that community, as well as other developmental disorders or neurological differences. And they provide a discussion forum where members can communicate to one another. There's article sections. They have a blogging feature. There's a lot of content there. And it's really a place where people with autism can go talk to one another. There are lots of other online forums. You have Yahoo groups that for every interest, Google Plus groups. A lot of the Autism Society chapters will have message boards. Autism Speaks used to, I think they still do. And then there are interest-specific groups. If your kid is really into Pokemon cards, there are online message groups about Pokemon cards. If they're really into Minecraft, if they're really into sailing, if they're really into radio repair, you can find interest-specific groups for just about any interest. If you have a child with an interest and you can't find a message group, I want to know about it. And quite frankly, if you find it, then they can create their own, because I'm sure there's somebody out there. So now we're going to take another deep breath, because we're talking about a lot and it gets very overwhelming, particularly if you're not well versed in all of this. So as I mentioned before, we will have more webinars in the coming months. They're going to talk more about specific curriculum ideas. Next week we have one that's going to talk more generally about technology and apps for autism. But in the meantime, if you want to start doing some more homework, there are lots of sites that you can look at for information. I want to be clear that me including them here in this presentation is not an endorsement. I don't know a lot about these, but I wanted to include them so that you can check them out and decide if there's helpful information there for you. As I mentioned before, a lot of this is very specific to your family, your parenting style, your child, and so I can't tell you what to do. I can just give you resources to educate yourself and decide what's right for you. So the first one I want to share with you is Common Sense Media. If you don't know about it, it's just commonsensemedia.org. It's a nonprofit organization, and their mission is to help kids thrive in a world of media and technology. They work to educate parents and teachers and policymakers by providing information, advice, and tools to try and help harness the power of media and technology as a positive force in kids' lives. Common Sense Media offers a really large library of independent age-based and educational ratings and reviews for movies and games, apps, TV shows, websites, books, music. Now, it is important to keep in mind that the ratings and age suggestions may or may not reflect your family's values or beliefs or your child's ability to appropriately comprehend a site, book, or movie, but it's a good start to gathering information to make an informed choice on what's best for your child. You may know if your child is 12 and it says 13 above, but scary movies don't bother your kid, you know that. But it's a good place to kind of get information. It'll say what the content is, why they're giving it a certain rating, and it's a good place for movies, apps, websites to go and get some information. Safe Smart Social offers digital citizenship social media safety assemblies for teachers and parents, so they've got some great resources on their site. Autism Expressed is a fee-based program that teaches digital life skills to promote independence for students in a tech-driven society. Last time I checked, they did have a free trial on there. I've not used this, but it's specifically marketed to the autism community to teach people digital skills, so it might be something you want to check out, especially if they have that free trial. KidPrivacy.net reviews different sites and mediums and offers tips and advice for parental controls. WebWise is out of Ireland, and they have resources on their site for both parents and teachers. And then Safe Internet Surfing has lesson plans, and this site does have some examples of social stories on it that you might be able to use. But really nothing is going to take the place of parental controls and oversight. Don't over-rely on the controls and minimize the oversight, especially when your child's first venturing into these digital waters. Parental controls are great, but they're far from perfect. You know, if you go to YouTube, even with parental controls, you can find a lot of adult content that pops up, and so it really is important to monitor that. Work out what level of access and involvement you want to have with your child and then stick to it. So let me see really quickly here. We may have a minute or two for a couple of questions. Let me see. Oh, sorry about that. One thing. Okay, it looks like most of the questions are kind of some of the things we've covered. One question is, how do I know what age recommendations are for each site? If you go to any of those apps, even within the App Store, Instagram or Facebook, it has their age requirements on it. So, for example, I believe Instagram is 13. Now, again, that's on the honor system. You click, are you 13, yes or no? So if your kid's going on their own and they're 12, they could just click yes, and Instagram's not going to know. But it does provide recommendations that you can use as a guide to help you determine if that's an appropriate app for your child. So it looks like we're running out of time. So what I will do is, for those of you who have sent in individualized questions, I'll respond to you directly. Some of these we'll probably incorporate into our blog next week and later this year. We also do have blog posts that we come out and answer questions on. So again, if you follow us on Facebook or join our mailing list on our website, you'll get notification when those come out. I do want to thank some of our highly involved panelists. These are the ones that really got involved and helped us answer all these questions and do all of this research. And I just want to thank you for your time and attention. This is an evolving topic that changes all the time, and I think it's really important for parents and professionals to be mindful of it, to stay on top of it and stay informed, particularly those that are teaching social skills to our kids on the spectrum, because like I said, those rules are always changing and it's important to stay up to date. So I want to thank you for your time. If you do need a certificate of attendance today, we will send out a link to the quiz within 1 hour of the conclusion of this webinar, but if you want to go ahead, there's the tiny URL right there. And this presentation should be posted on our YouTube channel by tomorrow. We have a library of our past presentations on YouTube at the Johnson Center, no spaces, just go to youtube.com/the Johnson Center, and you can find past presentations, and this one will be on there tomorrow. Again, I want to thank you for your time and attention, and I hope you have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.